I typed the message slowly, like bait on a hook. My surgery's on the 15th, just need someone to drive me home. I stared at the glowing screen, waiting. The first reply came fast. My sister, Brianna. LOL, you actually thought we'd miss CABO for that? Then my mother, cold as glass. Don't guilt us. This trip's been planned for months. I didn't argue, didn't beg. Just wrote 2 words, my mistake. And that was all they saw of me that week. I had been raised in a family that prided itself on appearances, perfect vacations, picture-worthy smiles. But beneath it, rot. My father left years ago, said he couldn't stomach the cruelty anymore. I stayed, foolishly believing loyalty mattered. Even after all their small betrayals, I still believed. Believed that if the day ever came when I truly needed them, blood would mean something. But that text thread stripped me of illusions. They chose CABO over me, a margarita over my life. Fine. Then I'd choose the truth over them. The surgery wasn't life-threatening. Outpatient, a simple procedure. But they didn't know that. I let their silence sharpen into my weapon. I told the nurse at check-in, if anyone calls asking, don't give them details, just say you can't disclose. She nodded. HIPAA law made her my accomplice. 3 days later, the first ripple hit. Brianna called the hospital from Mexico. I imagined her voice, half irritated, half fake concerned, asking about me. What she heard instead was silence, followed by a clipped, "We can't disclose the patient's status." And in that void, her guilt finally had space to grow. When the guilt spreads, it devours everything. By the second day of their CABO trip, I heard through a mutual friend that Mom was frantic, whispering that maybe I hadn't made it, that maybe the last words she'd ever sent me were, "Don't guilt us." By the third day, Brianna stopped posting beach photos. No more bikini shots, no more ocean selfies, just silence. And then the call came, not to me, but to my lawyer. See, while they were sipping cocktails in Mexico, I was signing papers, rewriting my will, making sure every cent, every asset, every heirloom they thought they'd one day inherit slipped from their grasp. I didn't tell them, of course, not yet. But I did tell someone else, someone they never saw coming. My father. The man they'd spent years demonizing. The man who walked away, but who, unlike them, answered when I called. I signed everything over to him as executor, with one condition. He decide who deserved a second chance at me. The climax came when they returned from CABO. Mom showed up at my apartment door, makeup smudged, voice trembling. Why didn't you tell us it was serious? I let her in, watched her eyes flick to the untouched medical wristband on my counter. It wasn't serious, I said flatly. Her face drained. But the hospital, they said nothing. And you assumed the worst. That's not on them. That's on you. Then Brianna stormed in, tanned skin already fading into guilt. You manipulated us. You made us think. I cut her off. Calm, precise. No, I gave you a choice. Me or CABO. You made it. The reveal came a week later when the lawyer called a family meeting. Mom and Brianna arrived expecting apologies, maybe even a share of inheritance pity. Instead, they found my father at the head of the table. Every account, every property, every heirloom signed away. None of it with their names attached. Mom's voice cracked. You can't do this to your own family. I finally looked her in the eye, steady, cold. You're not my family. You're just people I share DNA with. Brianna lunged for the papers, eyes scanning in disbelief. Who even gets it all then? I smiled faintly. The man who didn't leave me waiting at the curb. Their silence was worth more than any fortune. In the weeks that followed, I watched them unravel. Mom posting cryptic Facebook quotes about betrayal. Brianna drowning in credit card debt without the promise of an inheritance to float her. And me? I healed. From the surgery, yes, but more from the illusion I'd carried all my life. The illusion that blood meant loyalty, that family meant love. What the nurse told them, the silence, the refusal, wasn't a lie. It was the truth they'd been too selfish to face. Because sometimes, not knowing is the sharpest knife. So when people ask about CABO, I tell them this. They went for paradise. They came back with nothing. And I stayed home. But I walked away with everything that mattered. Justice. And the quiet knowledge that when the time came to choose, I chose better than they ever did.